right, we are in Revelation, the 6th chapter. If anyone does not have the study helps, raise your hand, and these two guys right here will try to get these handed out to us. Raise your hand. Revelation, the 6th chapter. We in 6, but if you weren't here, you didn't miss much because we didn't get very far. Okay? Chapter 4, we enter into the throne room of God, and we are introduced to God. We see Him there. He's being praised by the beast, praised by the elders, and praised by the angelic beings. Chapter 5 opens, and this one who sits upon His throne has something in His hands, and what is it? It's a book, isn't it? And that book has been sealed with 7 seals. But there's only one problem. What is it? The text says, no man was found worthy to open the book. And John was upset, wasn't he? Until he was told to turn around. And he turned around, and who did he see? You can describe him in several different ways. Who did he see? Oh, man. There you go. He saw the one that was worthy. Okay, that's a good description. That's true. This individual is going to be worthy to open the seals. But who is this being? Oh, guys, come on. I can see you haven't been studying since we have not been in class. Okay? The Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, and the Lamb that was slain from the foundation of the world. Okay? He was told that it was the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He was told it was the Root of David. And yet, when he turned around, who did he see? He saw that lamb that was slain. And the lamb walks up, and what does he do? He takes the book, doesn't he? And then we enter into chapter 6, and what does the lamb start doing? Opening the seals. And that's where we were. We opened the first seal, sort of, kind of, and started getting into it. Okay? And that's where we ended. Before we get into our study, though, tonight, we are about to get in the part of Revelation that is going to get tough. Okay? And I want to read you some things that individuals have written about Revelation chapter 6. Okay? Because what is the hardest part of Revelation? Yeah, interpreting it. Okay? What does this stuff mean? What is John applying these things to, right? When individuals read this book in the first century, what did it mean to them? Okay, because folks, whatever it meant to them is what it's supposed to mean to me today. Okay, and then I make application of it in my life. So let me read you just a few comments that different commentators have made, and I've just entitled this, The Difficulty of Interpreting the Book of Revelation. Brother Foy Wallace makes this statement. The scene of the 4 horses and riders is a panorama of the war on Jerusalem in a 4-fold set of events, an extension of the 24th chapter of Matthew. They represent one set of events, not separate figures, for separated periods or ages of the world. Okay? So, Brother Wallace believes that when we read these opening verses, we read about these 4 horsemen of the Revelation, that it's talking about what? The destruction of Jerusalem. Okay? Brother West, in his commentary, now both of these men are members of the church. Okay? Both of these men are members of the church. He writes this. Not only did John in Revelation tell of the coming of the destruction of Jerusalem, the temple, and Judaism, but he also demonstrated that it fit into God's scheme for the redemption of mankind. God planned before the foundation of the world to bring Christ into the world to accomplish the redemption of mankind. And a part of the plan was to punish those who stood in opposition to God bringing it to fruition. Note the prophetic warnings of Moses in Deuteronomy chapters 28 through 32. When Jerusalem fell for the final time, the destruction of Judaism was as much part of the plan for the redemption of man as her fall in 586 BC. In order for Christianity to stand alone and no longer be recognized as a sect of the Jews, and in order for the Jewish Christians to learn their salvation was in no way dependent on the rituals of the temple and the law, God took them out of the way once for all. So what view does Brother West have of Revelation? The destruction of the city of Jerusalem. And not just the city of Jerusalem, but the temple and the law. Okay, let me ask you something. Judaism, the temple, and the law. Did it present a problem for Christians until AD 70? Oh yes. Big problem. Okay? Because it was all still in full-blown operation, wasn't it? Judaism was just as, being practiced just as fully as it had ever been practiced until what? Until the destruction, right? And then God did away with the temple. He did away with the Levitical priesthood. He did away with the sacrificial system once that city had been completely destroyed. So it was very important. And had Jesus foretold of the destruction of the city of Jerusalem? Oh yes. You read Matthew, Mark, and Luke. All three of those Gospels have sections dealing with the destruction of the city of Jerusalem in AD 70. So it was a big part of God's plan, and West believes that the Revelation is nothing more than a bigger picture of that destruction, and these four horsemen are a part of that. I'm going to read you Homer Haley. He is also a member of the church. Okay? And Brother Haley takes a very broad, general interpretation of the book of Revelation. Okay? Here's what he says. In summing up the vision of these four seals and their significance, we conclude that they represent the going forth of the gospel, the going forth of Christ in the gospel, or the word of redemption's scheme as it had been symbolized by the sealed book. Number two, the persecution of saints which follow the preaching of truth, which brought saints and the world into conflict. Number three, the discrimination in labor and business which added to the sufferings of Christians. And number four, the judgments that fell upon society as a result of pagan rejection of the divine message. So he believes that he just stated in very brief form what the four horsemen were. Okay? The preaching of the gospel. Okay? That was the first one. The rejection of the gospel. Okay, and the persecution of those who preached it. The discrimination that was brought about through business if you were a Christian, the third horse. And then lastly, God's judgment upon those, the fourth horse. And so it's a very broad, general application of the four horses. So all three of those are members of the church. All three of them, well, two of them take the same approach. One takes a totally different approach. Okay? Anybody ever heard of Barnes Notes? Heard of Barnes Notes? Barnes Notes, very much used commentary on the Bible. Okay? Here's what Barnes says relative to Revelation 6. In inquiring now into the period referred to by this symbol, he was talking about the second horse when he writes this, we naturally look to what immediately succeeded the one which was represented by the opening of the first seal. That is, the period which followed, listen to this, the accession of Commodus, 180 AD. We find in the events which succeeded his ascension to the empire a state of things which remarkably accords with the account given by John in the emblem. So much so that if it were supposed that the book was written after these events had occurred and that John had designed to represent them by this symbol, he could not have selected a more appropriate emblem. So he doesn't take the fall of Jerusalem. He says that all these events begin at the end of the reign of Commodus, okay, a ruler of the Roman Empire. And what he uses is what they call a progressive historical approach to the book of Revelation. Okay, he'll take you all the way to about the 400 or 500 AD in his approach of the book of Revelation, talking about the fall of Jerusalem and things. So when you get into the book of Revelation, guys, this is not easy. Okay, it is not easy, and there's nobody. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you think you know. There ain't no way you know exactly everything in this book. You know that? And guess what? We can argue about some of it till doomsday. And we're just going to have to die and go to God and say, God, who's right? And He may laugh at both of us and say, neither one of you. You know it? And so what we have to do is do our best, okay, and learn the lessons. There's tons of lessons that are found in the book, and make the best application of the book of Revelation that we possibly can. Now, I will tell you this as we enter into the book, especially this part of the book. I am more inclined to believe that the book refers to the fall of the city of Jerusalem than I am any other approach. Okay? Now, that is not the most popular approach in the brotherhood, okay? Although there's a lot of people who do accept that particular view, but it just, to me, makes more sense than any other approach to the book. Jim?
Can we just all agree for one thing, that it was to happen when he wrote it, and it has already happened as we're looking at it?
Oh, absolutely. The bulk of it, absolutely. Jim says, can we agree that the things that were written at the time were about to happen? And that's what the Bible says. They were shortly to come to pass. And that we are now not looking forward to these events happening. Okay? We are looking what? Back on events that have already occurred for the most part. Okay, and if you don't take that look of Revelation, you are going to wind up in some serious false doctrine. Okay, there are many people today who believe that hardly any of Revelation has been fulfilled, and they're trying to make application of it to today's world and the things that are going on now, and they've been doing it ever since Revelation was written. You know that? It's unbelievable, and you have to be very, very careful about those things. But you're right about that. All right, first seal is open. Who comes out? Nobody remembers. No, not horses. One horse. One horse, okay? Guys, y'all need to go back and read Revelation 6 a couple of times, okay? Y'all catch up with what we're going to be doing, okay? He opens the first seal, and out comes a white horse. Remember? A white horse. What do we say that the word white indicates? Two things predominantly. Purity. Number two, victory. Okay, victory. When you used to watch the good guys and the bad guys on television in the past, the good guys wore white and the bad guys wore black. Yes. So here's a white horse indicating victory. Okay? And that's where we got to last time. Now notice the next point, Revelation 6:2. And he that sat on him had a bow. A bow. Now there are two primary uses of bows in the Bible. Okay? We're talking about a bow and what? Bow and arrow. What are the two primary uses? Number one, war. Okay. Number two, hunting. Okay. The second one would be hunting. And we still use a bow for hunting today, don't we? There's what they call bow season that's still there. So those were the two. In this particular instance, however, the bow has reference to a symbol of, or a weapon of war. The Bible says in Psalm 7, beginning at verse 11, God judgeth the righteous, and God is angry with the wicked every day. If he turn not, he will whet his sword, and hath bent his bow, and made it ready. Folks, we are in what? Warfare, aren't we? Okay, and so this very first horse that comes out, he's a horse of victory. He's a horse that is prepared to do battle with the enemy. Now notice also that there was something else given to him. Not just a bow, but also a what? A crown. And a crown was given unto him. When you look up the word crown in the Greek language, it is the Stephanos. It is the victory crown. Okay? When the Grecian runners would run, when the Grecian wrestlers would wrestle, the winner would receive a what? A crown. Okay? They would receive a crown. Now, it wasn't a crown like we think of. It was a wreath, was it not? Okay, that was wrapped together and that was placed on their head as a symbol of victory. Well, out comes this horse. He has a bow and he's white and he's got this rider, and the rider has a bow and he's got a victory crown on his head, a symbol of victory. The war had not yet transpired, but this one had already been crowned with what? Victory. You like that? Did you get what I just said? Folks, the battle hasn't even started yet. But when he comes out and he presents himself, he's already got what on? The crown. He's already got the crown of victory on. We already know who's going to what? Who's going to win. We already know. Now, it's funny that for some reason the enemies don't know that. Do they? It's funny to me that Satan acts like he doesn't know that. Satan, guess what's going to happen to you? You lose. It's just that simple. And yet, what do they keep doing? They just keep fighting and fighting and fighting against God, don't they? Okay? It just unbelievable to me that they do that. A battle was about to take place, but there had already been someone on the horse of victory who had been crowned with victory. Now, he had been given a mission as well, hadn't he? Because the last part of that verse says this, and he went forth conquering and to what? And to conquer. Man. Barnes writes the following, he went forth as a conqueror and that he might conquer. That is, he went forth with the spirit, life, energy, determined purpose of one who was confident that he would conquer, and who had the port and bearing of a conqueror. John saw in him two things. One, that he had the aspect or port of a conqueror, that is, of one who had been accustomed to conquer, and who was confident that he could conquer. The other was that he was clearly the design for which he went forth, and this would be the result of his going forth. Okay, folks, when Jesus came out of the gate, guess what? There was no doubt in his mind that he was going to what? Win. When Jesus came to this earth, there was no doubt that when he finished his ministry, he was going to what? He's going to win. There's no doubt. When our Lord comes again, guess what? He wins. He knows that. He's designed for that. He's built for that. And he accomplishes that. So the question we need to ask ourselves is what? Whose side do you want to be on? Whose side do you want to be on? I think I'll just be on the loser side. Who in their right mind wants to be on the side of a loser? Not me. I want to be on the winning team, don't you? And folks, that team has already been determined. There's a question that's asked, and it is this: who is it who is sitting on the white horse? Because the verse doesn't name him. It just says that what? And one sat upon him. Doesn't say who that one is. Okay? It doesn't say it whatsoever. Who do you think it is? Folks, the only person that really makes sense is who? Is the Christ, isn't it? It's the only one who makes sense. And if you continue to read the Revelation and you get into the latter chapters, guess what? You see a rider on a white horse, okay? And he has a name written. And that name is written on his chest, and his name is written on his leggings, and guess what the name is? The Word of God. Who is that? Folks, it's none other than Jesus Christ. Why would that figure be any different from this one? Okay? Why would it be any different? It would be the Christ who has come to do battle. Okay? Let me ask you this. Has God had to figuratively do battle from time to time to time throughout the course of history? Oh, yeah. He's constantly had to inject himself, had to fight battles in order to be victorious over his enemies, hasn't he? Okay? And let me ask you this. Were the Jews one of his biggest enemies in the first century? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Folks, the reality is this. The bulk of the Jewish nation rejected the Messiah. Didn't they? We sit there and we say, oh, well, Vic, haven't you read Acts chapter 2? 3,000 people obeyed the gospel. 3,000 out of 1,000,000. You do the fraction. Folks, it is pitiful. You know that? Paul said, brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they might be what? Saved. Now this is in the time of the Apostle Paul. Romans chapter 10 verse 1. And still in Paul's mind, the bulk of Israel had done what? Rejected the Christ. Okay? And so they had become bitter enemies of the church and despised them. Okay? Questions, comments? I could go into a lot more detail, but we won't do that. Any questions or comments? That's the first rider. He's out. Yes, sir. The Jews? Oh no. Oh no. They still anticipate the Messiah. You know, if they're Messianic Jews, you know, they still are anticipating. There's so many branches of Judaism now that that's a whole other Thursday night study. Oh man. All right. So the first horse is out, is he not? Let's get to the next one. Verse 4. And there went out another horse that was red. The literal language is this, fiery red in the Greek text, okay? Fiery red. Anybody have a clue what red might indicate? Blood, yes. Destruction, good. Carnage, devastation. Okay? Those are what's indicated by that particular horse. Now, notice his mission. And power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth. Wow. I want you to listen to those first words. And power was what? Given to him. Hear that? Now remember, this is a red horse. This is a horse of destruction. This is a horse of bloodshed. This is a horse of carnage. This is a horse of devastation that's going to be brought out on mankind. And power was given unto him. No power ever does anything unless deity allows it. Got it? That's the lesson. That's the lesson. Somebody turn to Romans 13. Read verse 1.
Let every soul be subject unto the higher power, for there is no power but of God. The power that be
Did you hear that? There is no power but of God. The powers that be are what? Ordained of God. If an evil power is going to do anything, it's because God what? Allows it. God allows it. Do you remember when Jesus was standing before Pontius Pilate and he wouldn't answer him anything? And Pilate was just shocked. And Pilate said, don't you know that I have the power to what? To crucify you, or the power to release you? Remember that? He's pretty caught up in his what? In his power, wasn't he? Don't you know who I am? I'm Pontius Pilate. I am the prefecture of this particular area of the Roman Empire. I have been put here by Caesar himself. I have the power to crucify you or let you go. Remember Jesus, what He said? Jesus answered, Thou couldst have no power at all against me, except it were given thee from above. Unbelievable, isn't it? Pilate, you don't have any, you just think you have power, right? The only reason you have power is because of what? Because God gave it to you. Folks, the lesson for us is this: God's in control of all this stuff, right? God is the one who releases power. God is the one who limits power. God is the one who destroys power. God is the one who establishes power. There is no power but of who? But of God. That's what the text says, right? And there was given unto Him. And that came from God. Now, there was given unto Him what? Power to take peace from the earth. Two words there that are interesting, okay? When you and I think of the earth, what do we think of most of the time? Yeah, we think of the entire planet, okay? In this particular context, and in others where this term is used, it doesn't always involve the entirety of the planet. It can involve just a very specific area of land, okay? To take peace from the land, okay? And you can do some word study on that word and see if that's not the case. Okay, so some feel that it'd be better to be interpreted and gave power to take peace from the what? Peace from the land. Okay, peace from the land. And then the second word that's there is this word peace. Okay. In the original language, and this is still there, you can go and just look it up in the original language, it could easily be interpreted this way. And was given power to take the peace from the land. Okay? The peace. So he's talking about a very specific time period and a very specific place when he makes mention of this rider on the red horse. That's the intent of talking about those two words. Yes, the writer is telling his readers in this chapter of many things that will soon come. Yes, there will be victory, but before the victory there will be what? Devastation, bloodshed, destruction, carnage, warfare, evil in the land. Does anybody know about how long it took the Roman armies to overthrow the city of Jerusalem completely? What was the year it was destroyed? 70 A.D. Does anybody know how long it took them to destroy it, though? From the time they started till the time it actually fell and they overcame it? Nobody? About 4 years. 4 years. Okay? I don't know about you, 4 years is a long time, isn't it? If war were to break out right here in Jacksonville tonight, wouldn't 4 years of warfare in the city be a long time? That's a long time. Okay? And so, we often think, the destruction of Jerusalem, AD 70, we just think that the armies of Rome did what? Marched up to the city, overthrew it, threw them out, took it over, cast down the temple, and that was it. Folks, that wasn't it. Okay? It was a rather lengthy battle. In fact, Rome got pulled out and then had to go back again on a second tour. Okay, Jim? I couldn't understand what you're saying. The difference between what?
Well, they're two different horses. I assume they're doing two different things. So one is conquering and one is taking the peace.
Yep.
They seem to be the same thing to me. You see what I'm saying? Taking away the peace.
Well, it's like I said, the first horse is a prediction of what is going to happen. Okay? But it's not going to happen until when? Until after the bloodshed and after, what he's doing is, what John is doing, he's looking down the course of time. Okay? And he's telling the individuals, guys, in the near future, these events are going to happen. He doesn't put them in chronological order. He begins with what? Victory. Why would you do that? Huh? You want to encourage your readers, don't you? You want them to know, yeah, guys, it's going to get bad. It's going to be hard. There's going to be bloodshed. There's going to be war. But guess what? Don't worry. Don't quit. Don't slow down. Don't get discouraged. Don't give up. Don't reject the Christ. Because guess what? In the end, we win. Okay? And that's the reason he pictures the Christ going forth first. It's not in chronological order of events that are happening. Okay? He's just telling them what's going to be happening in the very near future. And one of them is what? Victory. Okay? Guess how many Christians died in the destruction of the city of Jerusalem? 0, according to Josephus. 0. None. Isn't that amazing? You want to know why? Number one, because it was predicted that they would win. Number two, they've been forewarned about what was going to come. And as soon as they saw the signs, guess what they did? They got out of the city. And not one Christian perished in the destruction of the city of Jerusalem. So, notice what Jesus says in Matthew 24:10 and 12. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Now, why do I bring that point up? Because there's another statement in the verse that says that these individuals are going to be involved in a what? And they shall kill who? One another. Okay? When this individual comes out on the red horse, it's not just one force. They're going to be killing what? Folks, what we have to remember is this is a personal thing. This involves real people. Okay? And during the course of this, they're going to be killing one another during the course of this. And there's going to be bloodshed. And Jesus had predicted it even in Matthew chapter 24. Now notice this next statement. And there was given unto him a what? Yes, don't say a sword. See, that frustrates me when you leave out descriptions. Okay? He's given a sword. No, he wasn't. Yes, he was. No, he wasn't. He was given a what? A great sword. There's a difference, I can give you a little sword, or I can give you a great sword. And there is a difference, isn't there? He was given a great sword. The sword was the emblem of what the rider was to do. The purpose of a sword is to do what? To kill. Okay? The purpose of a sword is to kill. It's that simple. And in order to kill, there has to be what? Bloodshed. There's an interesting verse. People don't like to talk about it. Turn over to Romans 13 again, real quick. Romans 13, Paul talks about the governments and how God established the governments. I want you to look at verse 4. He talks about the purpose of governments in verse 4. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. If you're a good person, he's supposed to protect you. That's what government is designed to do. Okay? But notice what else he says. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. What's the purpose of a sword? To kill. That's the purpose of a sword. Folks, what's Paul talking about? He's talking about capital punishment. God has authorized capital punishment by the government. Okay? If you do evil, guess what? He doesn't bear the sword in vain. He is authorized to do what? To take the life of individuals who are evil people in the nation. And the reason he does that is to protect who? Protect us who are good. Okay? So this second horse comes out and he's got a great sword. Gooder in the next seal. Does he? In fact, he doesn't get gooder in the next two seals. I want him to open these seals. Because there's only been what? There's only been one good one. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse. Oh. Folks, did the Jews and others put emphasis on numbers? Yeah, numbers were very important to them. And you want to know what else was very important to them? Colors. Colors. And the minute they heard a color, they immediately made associations about that color. Okay? The color black indicates mourning caused by some type of calamity. Used to, years and years and years ago, when someone died, how did everyone go to the funeral home? They dressed in black, didn't they? And the funeral home directors also what?
Dressed in black.
Dressed in black, didn't they? You know, it's kind of a scary situation. You know, you walk in, here they are. They're all in black. Okay, we don't do that anymore because, you know, our society has changed its view of death, and we want death to be what? Pretty, don't we? Okay? Huh? Yeah, that's right. It's a sign of mourning, isn't it? Folks, right here, the black horse is a sign of what? Mourning over calamities. Calamities such as famine and disease are often associated with periods of war and bloodshed. These cause the population to be thrown in despair and desperation. Their cries could be heard from without the city walls in which they were being protected. I want you to listen to Brother West and what he says. In times of war, there always develops great hardship among the people, unfortunate enough to be caught in its terrible throes. This was especially true in ancient days when people who fled behind the walls of cities for refuge were trapped. They had no access to the outside world once the siege began. And the long beleaguering continued, the more atrocious the circumstances became. There was always severe scarcity of life's necessities such as medicine and food. Sometimes the dearth was increased because food, water, and medicine were reserved for the soldiers. It was impossible for citizens of the walled cities or towns to get out and cultivate crops, because if they left the cities, they'd be killed or captured. As a result, death hovered over them like the air they breathed. See, we haven't lived in those kind of times, have we? We've been a blessed people, folks. Too blessed. We don't have any clue of what that kind of stuff means. You know, when I was growing up, the Vietnam War was going on, and every night you turn on the news and you'd see those cities that were being bombed, and those tanks that were rolling through those cities, and those cities that were just laying in ruins, and people were still living there. And you know, when I was little, I remember the images, but I didn't think a whole lot about it. But now that I'm older, you know, can you imagine what happened on 9/11 happening every day in the United States? Every day. You know? And you've only got certain places you can go to escape, and you may be in those places 5 days, 6 days, a week, a month or more before the threat of death passes. And every day, guess what? It's the threat of death. The sirens go off, the bombs start, the bullets are flying all over the place, and there's only one question that you're asking yourself, and it's what? Am I going to make it through today? You know, it's scary, isn't it? And this, you know, when warfare comes to these individuals, it's just a matter of total weeping and mourning and crying because of the situation in which they find themselves. So he tells them, guys, yes, we're going to be victorious, but before we are, there's going to be what? Bloodshed, and there's going to be a long, long period of mourning through which we go as well, wherein you're going to face some horrible, horrible calamities. And we'll talk about one of those calamities in our next lesson. Man, we just don't have enough time, do we? Need about 4 hours. Thank you, thank you.